Hello and welcome. Is internet file sharing a personal right, or is it simply robbery? Millions of songs are downloaded every day at no cost to music fans around the world, but the cost to the recording industry runs into the millions. Do artists benefit from this greater exposure, or are they losing out on a sizable share of their income?
Hi, I'm Jack Black. You probably know me from my movies and music. And that's why you'll understand why what I'm about to talk about is very important to me. Piracy. Look, super mega rock and roll gods and superstars are just regular dudes like you guys. We punch the clock, we put on the pants, and then we blow people's minds. That's how we make a living. And then these pirates come and they steal all our internets.
The increasing popularity of internet file sharing has caught record companies by surprise, and many are now struggling to survive. Some major labels are taking downloaders to court, and on Friday, a university student in Boston was found guilty of sharing 30 songs and fined $675,000. A single mother in Minnesota was recently ordered to pay almost $2 million in fines for sharing 24 songs. Recording artists say they're also noticing a considerable drop in income from illegal file sharing, but those who speak out against music piracy often risk losing the support of fans who feel songs should be available for free to anyone able to access them online. Plus, now that very large files can be downloaded more easily, the movie industry is also starting to feel more impact on its revenues, with a negative trickle-down effect on filmmakers. On today's show, we ask, what is the fairest way to deal with online artistic piracy? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room and take part. And we also welcome your phone calls on the show. Joining me today to discuss the issues are Christian Engström, a deputy chairman of Sweden's Pirate Party, which advocates free use of artistic works online for non-commercial copying. He's a former computer programmer and freedom of information activist. The Pirate Party did well enough in recent European elections to send him to the EU Parliament as its representative. He's joining us from Stockholm. From Los Angeles, we're joined by film and television composer Richard Gibbs, who scored music for at least 50 films and TV projects, including Battlestar Galactica, The Simpsons and Dr. Dolittle, and he's played on hundreds of albums. He's also toured with the popular 80s cult band Oingo Boingo and is organizing a Day of Sharing protest in support of artists' rights. Gentlemen, I welcome you to the show. And Christian Engström, if I could start with you there in Sweden and ask, you advocate free file sharing, but what happens when prosecutions get going in force? There's already that one I mentioned, the young man in Boston who's been asked to pay a fine of $675,000, Joe Tenenbaum his name is, and then that woman in Minneapolis who was ordered to pay nearly $2 million. It's going to get rather tough for those who are taken to court, isn't it?
Well, it is, but clearly these absurd verdicts do demonstrate how impossible it is to stop file sharing by using the courts. This fight will not be decided in the courts. It's a political battle. It will be decided on the political arena.
Well, let me ask Richard Gibbs to come in here from Los Angeles and say, what do you make of that court case against Joel Tenenbaum? Is it realistic, $675,000 for sharing 30 songs?
Well, first off, I am not one to advocate for the criminalization of consumers. I think that's a massive mistake that the record companies have been making. They're trying to make a larger point, of course, about the rights and the right to copyright, but they're going about it in the wrong way, in my view.
Well, Christian,
I think I might find that I might agree with Mr. Engström in more ways than he might realize. Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll go through some of the issues at play here during the next half hour on the show. But let me ask Christian Engström here then, just tell us the origins of your political party. A lot of people are surprised when they come across a party called the Pirate Party, of course. And what do you think has made it so popular with voters?
Well, the Pirate Party, we started on the 1st of January 2006. We took part in the national elections in September the same year, but we didn't get into parliament then. But then we kept on, and now in the European elections we got 7.1%. I think the reason so many people voted for us is these are important issues. We're entering the information society, and none of the traditional parties have an information policy, at least not a sensible one.
Let me ask you just quickly before I get a call from a viewer, tell me about the concept behind the Day of Sharing protest.
Well, the Day of Sharing is to point out the absurdity of Mr. Engström's stance and the stance of people like him who believe that all art should be free. The Day of Sharing is to point out, well, then perhaps everything should be free. Let's not have halfway Marxism. Let's go all the way if we're going to do it, or else not.
Well, let me get in Tommy from California, who's been waiting with a question. Tommy, thanks for that. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I'm a recording artist myself, and I'm writer of copyrighted works. You may have heard me sing with the rock band Boston.
Of course.
The group Airplay with David Foster. And my concern is, like these two gentlemen, we do agree that we're entering a new information age, and we do know that there needs to be some new orders and some new thinking here. But my strong concern is that for those of us who have worked so long to develop a career and so hard to write the product, it doesn't seem to me that it's like a code, writing code and stuff which goes obsolete so quickly. My concern and my question to Mr. Engstrom is, why does he not value the copyright of someone who's worked so hard for so long?
Mr. Engstrom.
Well, I do understand and do respect the very hard work that many musicians and other artists put into the work. But still, that's not enough reason to say no to the fantastic technology that the internet offers. And in particular, it's not enough reason to start abandoning the civil rights, because that's what's happening with a hunt for file sharers. The only way to stop file sharing is to monitor everybody's private communication, and that's simply not an acceptable price.
We've got George on the line from California too. George, go ahead, please.
Yes, this is for, hello Richard, by the way. For Mr. Engstrom, a question please. I'm assuming you own a car, and I'm assuming that you use gasoline in your car. Are you aware that the oil companies pay a royalty to the people who own the land from which the oil is taken? If we use your same sort of ideas towards the oil company, you would have the oil companies giving us oil for free, and the people who own the land where the oil is giving up their royalties. I don't see a difference. Can you explain it?
Well, that's got absolutely nothing to do with copyright legislation. Well, that's a completely separate piece of legislation.
Let me bring in Richard Gibbs here and ask, you know, what do you make of the public support, though, Richard, for the idea of file sharing? It seems that you know, the pirate party is becoming incredibly popular. I think nearly 36 countries now have an equivalent pirate party. There seems to be some kind of message, though, from the public saying we do want this stuff, but not necessarily to pay for it.
Well, I think, of course, they want it. I mean, that's good. I mean, it's much better that they want it than they don't, yeah? I mean, I'm glad they want my music. I'm glad they want the movies that I score. I'm glad they want all this stuff. The problem has been the delivery system has been quite awkward. It's quite disingenuous of Mr. Engstrom to suggest that this is all about a right to privacy. That's not what this is about at all. This is about monetization of the internet, of the ability to make money from creative works of art on the internet. And it is actually technically quite possible, and it would have nothing to do with privatization.
Richard, let me put let me put this question we got or comment that a viewer sent us through Twitter. They sent us a tweet saying, and this is Wolowski, who says, "I think the accessibility of art is a human rights issue." How do you respond to that?
It's not a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue insofar as the people who create the art have the right to control their own art. It is not automatically in the public sphere just because you create something. It does not belong to humanity. That does seem to be Mr. Engstrom's stance, and I don't agree with that. I mean, if I paint something, it's up to me whether I distribute it or not, and how I distribute it. It's not up to him.
Christian Engstrom, a question maybe I could put to you we got from Facebook, from our one of our viewers who sent it through Facebook. This is from Farhat Rabia in Pakistan, who wrote in saying, can we assess or have any comparative analysis over the visibility and popularity attained versus the loss in terms of revenue that is attributed to the net? Now, is there any such indicator that you know, or effort to measure the positive impact of the exposure against the diminished income from the piracy? Because often when people say that, there should be a right to download for nothing, the benefit is, of course, exposure. But is there any measure of that, do you know?
Yes, there is. Because if you look at the income for the cultural sector or for the music sector, you will see that for the last 10 years, it's been more or less constant, increased slightly. And it's important to remember that file sharing is not something new that we want to introduce. It was 1999 that Napster came along. So we have 10 years of experience of file sharing on a massive scale. And we see that income for the music sector is constant. What's happened is people have stopped buying records or decreased that radically. So instead they have money to go to concerts instead. And that's fantastic for the artists. because they make much more money from playing live than they do from records.
I'm going to get Richard's response in a moment, but we're going to take a short break here now. As we take the break, let me just get a live station comment we got from our people on the live station discussing this issue. And Hunter in Washington, D.C. here says, downloading songs off the internet is no different than trading tapes or CDs back in the 80s and 90s. My friends and I used to do that all the time. It spreads the word and gets the artist's name out there. I'll get Richard's response to that and Christian Engstrom's comments when we come back from this. As we pause, let me remind you, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments by logging on to livestation.com and entering the chat room where you can see a debate taking place. We're taking a snap poll in there today as well. We're asking, should all intellectual property be free for non-commercial use? Tell us what you think. We'll be right back. But we leave you with reactions about file sharing from some American consumers.
They haven't paid for it. You know, they need to go to the store.
It's not stealing, perhaps because I do download music, so I don't want to, you know, label myself a thief. But we do so much sampling today. I mean, so much music is sampled from something else anyway. I don't think the existing copyright laws and piracy laws adequately take that into account.
Downloading music and free movies takes from the artists and the actors. You know, makes it harder for them to make their income.